Thank you so much for choosing to listen to Building Better Businesses with Catalyst Consulting. I'm Kristen Dees, the founder of Catalyst Consulting, a business consulting agency that is passionate about helping small businesses thrive. The goal of this podcast is to connect entrepreneurs with experts in a variety of industries that support small business owners in order to provide you with helpful tips, resources, and some entrepreneurship inspiration. Thanks for joining me today. I'm super excited for my guest, Dot Rock of Dot Rock Consulting. She helps people get to their zone of genius and stop doing everything and helps people hire. So I'm pretty excited to have you on. We kind of have some similar bents to our strategies. So I'm excited to have a conversation with somebody that does things like I do, kind of.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. You betcha. So tell us a little bit about you as a human being. Where are you from? All that good stuff.
As a human being, I live in Durango, Colorado, which is this little ski town. I mean, it's not too little in Colorado. And so we just have immediate access to the outdoors at all times. Like you can leave work and be on one of the greatest mountain biking trails in the world within like 5 minutes of, stepping outside of your office, or you can go skiing or rafting or kayaking or hiking. And it's just this mecca of outdoorness and amazing athletes everywhere. I'm married to a former professional athlete, so I've got that going in my life, which is always a push. And we have 2 little boys that are both 9 years old that are athletes as well. And so we live this life of adventure. We like to travel a lot, and I like to work remotely. I'm fueled personally by CrossFit and just being really active every day and working and connecting with my clients. And I own this little consulting firm, Dot Rock Consulting, where I help scale small businesses.
Nice. Very cool. Share a fun fact about you.
Fun fact, I'm a pilot.
Oh, what sort of flying devices?
Little Cessna airplanes.
Nice.
Single engine airplanes. It's funny because when my son was little, I worked at this rocket engine test facility where I was a finance manager, and we were based at an airport. And so at lunchtime, I could go do touch and goes and fly airplanes and practice my landings, which is the fun part of flying. And I'd come home and he's like, "How was your day, Mama?" It was just him and I at the time. I was a single mom up until I remarried last year. So it was 8. And he says, "What was your day?" And I'd say, "Oh, it was good. I had to do touch and goes at lunch." And he'd go, "Did you fly the helicopter?" And I'm like, "No, baby, I'm not a helicopter pilot." And he'd go, "No, you're just not cool, Mom. You're not a helicopter pilot. You don't know any other moms that fly airplanes at lunch."
Yeah, just to go practice. That's amazing. Yeah. That would be super fun.
He decided he was like, "Well, what's the hardest thing to fly?" And I was like, "Probably an osprey." He's like, "Okay, I'm gonna be an osprey pilot when I grow up." Let me just one up you times 11.
Mm-hmm. You're like, "Okay, bud." Yeah.
That's a fun fact.
Yeah. No, that's pretty cool. What made you decide to learn how to fly?
Right. I don't remember a single moment in my entire life that I didn't want to fly airplanes. I remember being a little girl looking up at airplanes. I had this little wooden thing off the end of our carport when I was a kid that I would go sit on, and it had some wing-like things. And I thought, I was just flying up in the sky, and I loved the sound of airplanes. And it's interesting because in my 20s right after college is when I went to get my pilot's license. And I was doing touch and goes one day, same thing with my instructor. And I called my grandma, and she's like, I think that landing is actually the easiest part of flying. And I was like, "You are a pilot, Grandma?" And she's like, "Yeah, I used to be, your grandfather and I used to own planes." And I had no idea. So maybe it's in my blood. Yeah, I never remember a moment not wanting to fly.
No, that's awesome. That's always been one of those secret things. I get motion sickness pretty horrendously. And so I'm always like, I wonder if the same logic applies. Like when I'm driving a car, I don't get motion sickness. I'm like, maybe if I'm flying a plane, I won't get motion sickness. So I'm going to test that out at some point in time.
Because you could have a flight instructor next to you take over the controls if you do get plane sick, but take barf bag.
Yeah. I always take Dramamine or Bonine actually, but
I can't do it when you fly an airplane.
Oh, really?
No. There's all
okay.
There's all kinds of restrictions on pilots.
I mean, I guess that makes sense.
I don't even think you can take a Benadryl and fly an airplane.
Well, that makes sense to me too, because it's that'll knock you out, or some people it would. So good to know. So I would have to be legit testing it out and be like, "Listen, I might."
Be ready to tip the guys who'd be like, "Look, I think I might get plane sick.
Are you squeamish in case I throw up? We need to know." Oh, it's funny. No, it's super cool. That's a cool little fun fact. So what do you do on the work side of things? Like, how do you provide support for entrepreneurs?
Well, I'm a CPA and HR professional. So that's a little bit of like the magical unicorn combination in the business world, where when I help people scale businesses, I like to look at scaling from a three dial perspective. And when I say scale, I don't mean grow. Like we're throwing around this word scale in the online world lately, and I think we're using it inappropriately often.
Yeah.
Scaling means we exponentially grow with minimal input changes.
Mhm.
So to minimally change the dials that I see three dials, one being time, and that's a big dial of what you could change in a small business. And that's where the people are. Like 85% of expenses in a business are typically people. And shifting people's time. And then the other dial is profit, which is revenue minus expenses. Could we increase your revenue? Could we decrease your revenue? Could we change the packages you sell? Could we increase your profit margins? Could we decrease your expenses? Let's look at that. And then the third one is operations. How can we streamline operations, not be as efficient as possible? And so that's how I work with clients. So it's a little bit of the time perspective that has money implications to it, but also a lot of mindset work. We all have 24 hours in the day, and it's oftentimes in resetting the mindset of us not having to do everything, or how we learn to delegate or hire the correct people to surround ourselves with support, that can be the biggest game changer in scaling a business. But then I have that skill set where we could also like go play with the specific numbers of that. So you want to add a new program, here's what will happen to your revenue, but what expenses are going to increase because of that too, right? Like it just all kind of flows together. So that's the work that I do with small businesses to help them grow and change. And then we create hiring processes that work, that are sustainable. And I love hiring and delegating.
Mm-hmm. No, it's awesome. I actually have been helping people with that fairly recently too, because just of how the hiring landscape has changed in the last year or so in particular. It's such an intimidating process for people, especially, I mean, and you know this too, like a lot of business owners start a business, but that doesn't mean that they have a background in leadership or business management or any of that kind of stuff. So,
or accounting or
yeah. Yes.
Or,
oh my God. Yeah.
using Squarespace, right? And so we are really successful people often because we've had this grit factor of like, oh, I can learn that. Oh, I can do that. And you start a small business and that list is exhausting to think about, like really carrying all that on yourself and making happen all these creative ideas that are flowing in while trying to find new clients.
Yeah, it's a tough process. I just talked to someone, well, not just, but I guess a couple of months ago, I was talking to a gal that just started her own insurance agency, and she's been in insurance for basically her entire adult life. It kind of runs in the family. And she's like, I thought I was super organized. And then I started my own business and I'm like, maybe I'm not organized. And I was like, well, there's a difference between using existing systems and processes and creating your own. And doing that effectively and efficiently is very challenging, especially when you're in the thick of it. Like it's always easy, like from our perspective, right, to come in and be like, oh my God, what are you doing to yourself? Maybe let's try moving these things around. But yeah, that's like you said, that's our zone of genius, is the whole, how do we create some structure and like gain efficiency and find you the right people to help you grow your business effectively? Because it's such a scary step for a lot of people, especially if they've never even done an interview. They don't even know what to look for in resumes. So I saw you have a hiring workshop or hiring boot camp.
Yeah, I do. It's like a 30-day sprint, really, to help people, first of all, just think about what they don't want to do anymore and how to then, after they've captured that, what they don't want to do, what they don't like doing, what takes a lot of their time, what is their zone of incompetence, and kind of categorizing things and then figuring out what the trend is for them that specifically would be of value to outsource. And when you outsource something, it can be just a 1 hour a month. You can start really small. And so there's a lot of mindset work that can be done within those quick 30 days to say, oh, wait, I could actually hire a little bit here on a project basis. Here's what I've specifically come up with. I help you write a job description. We create your hiring process and we get somebody onboarded within a month. And I think that can just be a game changer for businesses. It's actually one of my small offerings. But I did it because I had so many friends in the online space that I met through coaching communities that needed that push they think they don't have the strategy to do it. And I can give you the strategy. It's just a little bit of it.
Yeah.
But if we work
Yep.
through some of those mindset blocks, which can be done quickly, it can be just such a game changer to see what you don't have to have on your plate. And then you can increase revenue exponentially because you're not doing everything.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a process. The thing that I usually do, my version of that is that I make them draw a little box and I'm like, tell me the things that you're good at, the things that you love to do, the things that you're bad at, and the things that you hate to do. Cause sometimes those are like, you think that you like doing all the things you're good at. And I think a lot of us kind of get that in our heads too. It's like, well, I'm good at it, so I should do it. And it's like, that is, but if it sucks the freaking life out of you, man, like don't do that to yourself. Like, it feels so much worse, especially if it's something you have to do consistently. So,
well, I think we found probably a lot of, again, success by doing things that we're good at, but do they really light you up? Does it really bring you joy? And if it takes you a really long time to do it and you feel drained at the end of it, that isn't something you should probably keep on your plate. And it's hard though, because those things make us money.
Yeah. Yep. It's the entrepreneur autodidact thing too. I think a lot of us are like, because we can do something. And like you said, like we've talked about, like when you're starting a business, you kind of have to do a lot of things that maybe you didn't do before or didn't know how to do before. And yeah, it's a process to kind of unravel that. It's like, well, I can learn how to do it. It's like, sure. Right. But just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Exactly. And then, then I face oftentimes people who've switched from the corporate world and now own a business are like, okay, great. So I can hire one virtual assistant as like my executive assistant who does everything. And I'm like, well,
oh yeah,
your executive assistant at your old job who did absolutely everything for you, she or he was probably also doing things that took them way more time than they should. Not many people are really good at organization and creative things and bookkeeping, and like to ask one person to be your savior is not a great idea.
Yeah. It's like start finding someone that's really, really good at the things that you hate to do. And my God, your life will change. Like,
or a couple of people, just a couple of hours a month, and when you look actually at your rate of pay, let's say, versus theirs and the amount of time, like if I go do something on Squarespace on my website, I can figure it out, but it will probably take me 6 to 8 hours to do things, right? That that effectively are like creating a new sales page. But if I hire somebody else to do it, it'll probably take them 2 hours and my time can be used somewhere else. And I think that's something we need to continually be evaluating as entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think the continual evaluation is important too, because that happens a lot I've noticed like as businesses evolve, people start to create new processes, or they're like, oh, now I need a system for this. And now I need a system for this. And like, it just kind of gets added on. It's like a little rubber band ball or something, instead of being like, okay, hold on, like, does this make sense for the current processes? Like, is there something that I'm already using that can also work for this? How do I like scale this in the future? If I add team members as I go, that kind of stuff too. So a lot of times I find that I'm unraveling some of those things too, because we're just like, well, I need this now and I need this now. And like, I've been paying for a subscription for something that I haven't used in 6 months because I needed it for 2 months. And here we are. But that's also, I have a bookkeeper that helps me with that stuff. I'm like,
and those are
that was like the first thing. Yeah.
That's I call that sort of like a rhythm of business. What types of things do I need to continually look at, or have someone on my team hopefully continually look at? Because scaling is not a destination. It's a journey, right? Like we're not going to arrive and be done. Like there are certain processes and rhythms in our business that we need to continually look at, tweaking, changing, revisiting. Look back at your numbers. You should be looking at your numbers every month. You should be having someone look at your subscriptions, because we sign up for things. That's why subscription models work.
Yes.
They don't turn themselves off.
Yep. That's the whole plan. I literally was just having this conversation with someone the other day. He's like, I should use a punch card. And I was like, no, you should do a monthly subscription. And he's like, oh. And I was like, how many people don't cancel their gym memberships? And he's like, yeah, okay, I got you.
Yeah.
I was like, I mean
it's a great way to scale a business.
Yeah. I mean, you make it small enough that it's not like you're trying to rip people off and do like $300 a month, but in theory, even if they use it a few times a year, they're still getting a better deal than if they just paid full price once. Hey, thanks for listening so far. I just wanted to stop and share a very helpful legal resource for small business owners and entrepreneurs. Brittany Rattel, who was also a guest on this podcast, episode 8, I believe, if you want to go check it out. She has a ton of very helpful legal resources and templates on her website that entrepreneurs can take advantage of. She specializes in helping online content creators protect their digital content, and all of her resources are set up to help us with all of those things. So whether it's creating contacts to provide to your clients or to potential vendors, or just protecting your website with effective terms and conditions and privacy policies and that kind of thing, all kinds of options, very reasonable prices, and she always walks people through how to use her legal templates. She provides tutorials that go along with them to help you customize it to your specific business. The link for that is lddy.no/12luy, and that link is also in my show notes because those are a bunch of random letters that don't make sense. Yeah, so talk a little bit more. This is one of my favorite things about this podcast is the entrepreneur journey. So like how you got from CPA to HR to doing your own consulting business, our journey, our drunk ladybug, as I call it. It's like
Exactly.
not a straight line.
Exactly. It's a cartoon show over here for me.
Yes. Yeah. Same.
Well, so I talked a little bit about the flying thing. When I went to college, there were a bunch of routes I thought I was going to take: be a doctor, be a lawyer, be a politician, be a journalist, all these different things. And I started taking business courses because I thought someday I'll own my own business. And accounting was the hardest. And so of course, here I am, type A perfectionist. I was like, well, I'll go for the hardest. And it was during Enron. I thought if I ever own my own business, I don't want anybody to be able to screw me over or steal from me. So I want to understand how this science works. And so I started doing accounting, and then an accounting professor, I'll never forget like exactly what she was wearing, where she was standing when she asked me, what are you going to do when you graduate? This is when I was a junior, and I was like, I'm going to go fly airplanes. What are you going to do when I graduate? And she was just like, yeah, I get it, but what do you want to do for your career? And I just was like, I don't have any idea what I want to do for my career. And so big four accounting firms were recruiting and smaller firms were recruiting at my college. And she said, why don't you just sit down for some interviews? And so I did. And I ended up getting hired by KPMG International, which is one of the biggest accounting firms in the world. And so I went off and did that. I was a financial statement auditor for them. I was like 22 years old. They gave you a credit card and traveled the world and met people and did amazing trainings and worked your little butt off. So I did that for a few years, and I just kept finding that I loved having those conversations with CEOs and CFOs about the numbers and how it tied into their operations and why they did the things that they did. But it kind of drove me crazy to look in arrears all the time, to look back at the year previous and think, wow, you could have done this so differently and these things would change. What if we were looking at things from a forward-looking perspective? It just seemed really inefficient to me. And I definitely have this pre-wired efficiency brain, but I also loved this people side of it, those connection conversations. And so as I went through my career, I was a finance director, I was a CFO, finance director of a municipality, and I just kept seeing inefficiencies. But then I started realizing that finance was constantly overseeing HR. And I liked the HR processes, and I liked the people, and I liked in a business, when I actually worked in a business, I liked moving people around where they fit best, where they served the operation most efficiently, and creating processes around that. And so my last corporate job before I created this business was I was an HR director for a school district. We had like 250 employees, and I oversaw payroll, which was great, but also all of the benefit side of things and hiring and firing and dealing with discipline issues and really moving people around in this organization where they were most effective, efficient, happy, filled with joy. And I loved that. And so that's why I started this business, was to help small businesses do that on a scale that worked for them and get them to surround themselves with support and a team that actually functions and create some processes. I realized that those are things that come really easily to me, but don't come easily to a lot of business owners. A lot of business owners started their business because they were really passionate about something like owning a bike shop, but then they get stuck in doing all these things that they don't enjoy: people management, payroll, wah, wah, wah. go on and on. So that's a little bit of how I came to where I'm at. But I also, I really left the corporate world because of my family. I wanted to pick up my kids from school, particularly my son. I had never picked him up from school. And I had set a goal when he went to kindergarten that by the time he was in second grade, we would either move overseas and have a nanny, or I would quit and have my own business and be able to pick him up at 3 o'clock, because I had never done anything other than the 7:30 drop off for preschool and the 5:30 pickup with after school care and all those things. And I realized that time was fleeting. And so I wanted that car ride home, that 10-minute of, hey, how's your day? And they often don't tell you anything, but many times they tell you so much. I wanted to experience that on a consistent basis. And that's what drove me to create this as my business, so that other people could experience the same thing.
No, I like that. I think a lot of people that left corporate life, I call us corporate survivors, because some of us, it was not a super great experience all the time. But I think it's kind of similar. Like, that's as far as like living a life that gives you freedom and flexibility to do what you want when you want to do it. And for me, I kind of had similar things where like my brain naturally sees process improvement opportunities, inefficiencies, as you described it. I'm really good with building teams that are unique and quirky, but also work really well together to accomplish a common goal. And you can't do that in corporate life. Usually it's also a lot of, we empower you to make change, but we also don't. Because in corporate life, you're usually talking about a larger machine. So it's harder to turn the ship to do whatever the thing is. So it's just, that'll be, we can do that in like 6 months or a year, or we're working on this right now, but this kind of stuff. So I got to the point where I kept thinking that I was defective because I couldn't just do the things. I was like, this is stupid. Like, why are we doing these things? And like, don't get me wrong. Like, at my core, I understand that I'm not the smartest person, and it's not always like my answer is not always the right answer. But when I'm just like, why do we keep doing this stuff over and over again? And just like trying to reinvent the wheel, but make it sound cooler than it already was, and pizza parties to try and fix the employee disengagement and churn problems that we have.
Listening works a little better than pizza.
It does. Or just actually giving a shit about your employees as human beings and not cogs in the machine.
And I have to say, I have been consulting with several little bit larger businesses through as we reintegrate back into the workplace post working from home during COVID. And what's often coming up is they approach me and they say they don't want to meet any of their milestones anymore. They are really struggling to be back in the workplace. They hire me to come in and help with this situation, right? And create a process and or advise them on what it is. And I say, well, one of the things you got to recognize is that our employees, all of us, have a lot more stress than we've ever had. We are worried about Ukraine. We have family members that are immune compromised. We might be immune compromised. We might not want to tell our employers that we're immune compromised. We have kids that might be homeschooled some weeks and not others, and financial stresses and if we can't really recognize that our employees are truly human going through this challenging time, and connect with them and honor that and ask them what they need now to do their job, what those tools are, what that time factor is, and how we can accommodate, you're going to just become another victim of the Great Resignation. People will go find somewhere else to work that is able to meet those needs. And if we can't have those conversations with our employees, what do you need now? How are you doing now? How can I help? We're not going to be able to meet our milestones.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good way to look at it, because it's just a lot of people have there is the more stress aspect. And I think a lot of people also have a significantly better work-life balance because they are working from home. And some people, like, their kids are like, when they've been at home, they're saving money on childcare because they can be there when their kids are existing, like hanging out, and they can be there instead of having to pay somebody $2,000 a month to do daycare or whatever the thing is. And like you said, even just some of the flexibility to be able to go pick up their kids or take them to school now instead of having to figure out all these other carpool arrangements or having family do the thing. So there's like, it's, yeah, like you said, just having a conversation of like, what do you want? What do you need? And how do we make that work? And if you
And
can't make
asking
it
them,
work, that's fine. Like,
but you
yeah.
can also say, okay, you need that. Can you help me think of a way we can help make that happen?
Mhm.
Like, I'm a pretty creative person, but I can't always solve the problems. But groupthink works.
Yeah. Mhm.
Like, let's rely on, let's open up the door to say, hey, okay, this is what you need. Okay, this isn't working. All right, what do you think would work? Okay, how do you think we can get from where we are to where that would work? Because people, if they're motivated and if that's what they need and they're motivated by, they'll help you come up with a way to fix that
Yeah.
so that they can have what they need.
Yeah. And I think because a part of the conversation that I think comes up fairly regularly too is like productivity and being able to effectively manage productivity in remote employees, especially like not necessarily entry level, but somewhere around there. And I'm like, those are the same people that had productivity issues when they were in an office and they weren't being effectively managed at that point in time either, or performance
Mhm.
managed, I guess. So you know what I'm saying? Cause I feel like that comes up a lot. People are like, well, I need to be able to like have my employees here so I can watch them and see what they're doing. I'm like, they weren't doing anything. They weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing then. And they're also not going to do it when they don't have any oversight either. But that's having conversations and performance management and
Mhm.
effective accountability, all those kinds of things too.
And I
So
mean, we've got a reestablished connection
yeah.
with our employees. And, I had one client that was like, yeah, but my employees are coming to work head down and then they just leave. They don't even say goodbye to each other anymore. And I'm sorry, but that's a sign of a lot of stress that has probably nothing to do with the job and probably everything to do with what's going on at home and how stressful this is to switch back. And how do we reconnect with those employees to hear what they're going through and help them again see, okay, so the business has these things that need to be done. How do we merge the two and how do we remarry this to get our arrows realigned in the same direction?
Yeah.
And I
Because there's a
think
lot.
that's about connection,
Yeah.
period.
Like team building and culture is an intentional activity that starts at the top. Like if you're trying to build a culture of something where employees feel connected to each other, feel connected to the team, to the job, whatever the thing is,
Mhm.
like that takes, yeah, intentionality and effort. It's like you were saying,
Yeah.
listening to your employees and treating them like they're human beings. And sometimes you can't give everybody everything that they want,
No,
but that's just part of the
but
conversation.
sometimes there's power in hearing what they say,
Hmm.
honoring that, and saying, I can't meet that right now.
Yeah.
I want us to help. I would like to find a way that we can in the future. Like just honoring that there is a gap matters.
Hmm. And I think even if, because this is one of the things too, is when you have employees leaving and you don't know why they're leaving or that they were even looking for something else, you have a pretty serious problem because they're not talking to you in that kind of way where you could just say, hey, you know what, this isn't going to work. We have to be able to meet these minimum standards. I need these things to make my business run efficiently. And you need these things to help your life run efficiently. I will give you a good reference. I will help you, I'll reach out to people. And there's that kind of stuff where it's like, hey, this isn't going to work, but you're still a good person, because a lot
Absolutely.
of places don't do that. They're like, oh, well, you're dead to me.
Right. Well,
But
I
yeah.
mean, it's one of the reasons I argue that state interviews are really effective in businesses. I prefer to call even annual reviews just employee connection time. Like, let's reconnect. Let's talk about your goals, your why, what motivates you, and then the business, what the business really needs, and are those two aligned? And how do we check in and see if we're on the same path, or you want to be more engaged or
Yeah.
push harder, or you just need a different chair in your desk to feel.
Yes. It's seriously. So sometimes it's
You
that simple. Yeah.
people
Yep.
very rarely, I think it's like, I don't remember the statistics, but it's like 9 out of 10 people don't leave for money. They'll tell you
Yep.
it's money, but it was actually those smaller things like, oh, I wanted 2 monitors, or I
Yep.
wanted to be able to pick up my kids from school. And it is far easier to go with the grass is greener and go ask for what you need somewhere else
Yeah.
in
Uh,
any relationship that we have.
that's what I was just gonna say. I was like, it is a relationship, and people don't manage it that way. They treat it like it's a transactional arrangement. And if if you're not able to effectively communicate, establish boundaries, hold each other accountable to the agreements, all of that kind of stuff, like it's not going to work because it is a relationship. There's money attached to it. But yeah, no, I totally agree. Hey, thanks for listening so far. I just wanted to stop and tell you about Bambi, which is a great HR resource for small business owners. It's basically outsourcing your HR or getting HR support in-house for managing all of your employees. They also help with payroll services too, but their real bread and butter specialty is providing small business owners with comprehensive HR support and setting you up with best practices for the long-term success of your business. So if that's something that you're into, I highly recommend checking them out. They are a great resource and one of my favorite ones to recommend for HR services. The link for that is Bambee, BAMBEE.GRSM.io/catalyst. And the link will also be in the show notes for the episode in case that's too many letters to remember. Check it out. What are the top 3 things that you think all business owners need to know about what you do? Like, what are some of the key things that you're like, I wish everyone knew these things about running their business?
I think the number one thing I would say is hire early. It's like so many other things in life. Like, were you really ever ready to have your first kid? I mean, I had infertility issues and I still wasn't actually ready to be a parent when I had a kid. But hire early. And there's so many mindset blocks to that. I can't afford it. I'm not big enough yet. I don't know how to do that process yet. So I can't teach somebody else how to do that, etc. So my number one is hire early, don't do everything. My number 2 is truly step into delegation and learn the art of delegation. Yes, there's strategy. Yes, there's some steps, but so much of it is and can be this creative flow of process. When we delegate to somebody, we are actually, the definition is to empower someone else on your behalf to do something, empower them. And there's a little process to learn how to do that, but then stepping into that and learning how to do it, it's just such a muscle that we can learn to flex. And it's so powerful in businesses. And so I love to teach people how to delegate. And then I think my third thing that I want people to understand about working with me is most everything is mindset work first. And, I say when you scale a business, you think you're going to hire somebody to help you do that. And you're like, oh, well, I'm not ready yet. I got to do X, Y, and Z. And before I'm ready for that strategy. And actually, 50% of the work is mindset. 10% is habits. 35% is accountability, like somebody holding you accountable to take those actions and implement those processes or change things in your business, hire people. And then there's like 5% that's actually strategy driven, which I love the strategy. That's what lights me up. And working with people and helping them with that and creating, like, interviewing can be fun, especially if you do it in alignment. And all of this stuff, in my opinion, all of scaling in a business isn't about the bottom line. It's actually about living a life in alignment. I think that scaling, if you look at the scales of justice, right, they're like off balance. And when I scale a business, my goal is to get things off of one person's plate and make those scales balanced so that it feels good. We left the corporate world because something didn't feel good. And how do we create the environment that we truly want so that at the end of the day, we don't say, oh, I should have worked less. Oh, I should have spent more time with my family. Oh, yeah. Right. Like, I don't want to live with that regret. I don't want to miss the school pickups. I like my relevancy factor with my children is diminishing. They're 9 years old, right? They're not going to care to spend this quality time with me. And so if I'm so focused on building this empire just for revenue and not for what feels good, I think I'll really regret it.
No, that's good. I think that makes sense too. It's just doing things for the right reasons, I guess, is the important piece, and your why you're doing the things. Because lots of people, like you said, the people that are out there just trying to make a buck or make a bunch of bucks, and it's just not authentic and genuine. I think that comes through. And yeah, like those are the people that I'm like,
That's when overwhelm kicks back in. That's when burnout kicks in. And when burnout kicks in, we disconnect in some capacity. We numb things out. We disengage. And you don't usually get to just choose that in what one area of your life, work. Usually it overflows into everything. It overflows. Well, I can't really hire because I don't know what to do. So I'm feeling stuck. And then at home you're feeling stuck and your kids feel it and your wife feels it. And it just, you don't get to like compartmentalize that.
Yeah, you really can't. I think people who do try to separate and be two different people, like that's such an unhealthy balance to have too, where it's like, I'm just going to put this here and I'm going to put this here. Like it can't, it eventually is going to bleed over, and it's just not a healthy practice to be in.
So many businesses fail because of overwhelm and burnout.
Yeah.
And people doing it all. And I just, in my core believe that we were hardwired for connection, as Brene Brown says, right?
Mm-hmm.
And within that, hardwired to actually surround ourselves with a tribe and to not do it all. I mean, if I were to have another baby, I know that I would surround myself with more support than I did the first time. I wouldn't have this attitude of I have to do it all. I have to be it all. I have to be everything to this child at all times. I think it's so valuable. My pilot analysis is that when you're flying an airplane and something goes wrong, or you're to an area that you need oxygen, you don't put it on the passengers first as the pilot. You actually put it on yourself first, right? And when we're in a commercial airplane and those like little, they teach us about the oxygen mask, they always say, parents, put it on yourself first and then assist the person next to you. Because what will happen if I don't have oxygen as the pilot or as the mom is I can't help anyone else if I didn't do that first. And so I think that we have to find a way to put our oxygen mask on first as entrepreneurs and take care of ourselves first and be really the chief energy officer in our business first before we do anything else. And then that's why it becomes easier to hire that tribe and have a tribe supporting you, because if you're managing your energy, you can't do it all by yourself all the time.
Yeah. And you also, I think a lot of people too can put too much pressure on their significant other to be the person for everything also. And I don't believe, my best friend and I talk about this all the time because we've been through like a series of divorces together. Like we've been through lots of shit, right? And we talk about that all the time, is like you can't be all things to one person for all of the reasons that we've kind of already talked about. Like you have specific zones of genius, you have things that you're naturally gifted at, ways that you show love, ways that you receive love, and you just can't, because like then there's never any balance or time to breathe and like learn and grow in that space. So I feel like, as we already kind of talked about, relationships are relationships, and spreading that energy out. And I feel like too, like one of the best things about having the tribe, the community of people, especially other business owners, is that the support and understanding and relief that comes from people who understand what you're going through is completely different from somebody who doesn't. They're like, oh, that's really cool. Good for you. You launched a new thing. And other people would be like, oh my God, it's so amazing. Like, that's so rough. Like launches are the worst, and you're just like the absolute worst. Or developing a course or an online program is like the front load is terrible. So good for you for sticking it out. Yeah. That's a whole different vibe.
My last launch was a total flop.
Launches are terrible.
I had 0 people sign up for my boot camp, and I've had successful boot camps in the past. But what was really cool about it is that I still said it was all, we streamlined so much, we learned so much, and we created so many cool free ebooks because of it. And what ended up happening was it opened up capacity that I wasn't going to have in the month that we had that boot camp, that I actually ended up needing for bigger projects. And so, launches are their own special beast.
They really are. Yeah. Yeah. I've had a couple of things like that where I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to teach 4 regular classes every month. So the first week is going to be this, and the second week's going to be this. And then I was like, this is terrible, but it helped me realize, okay, so I really do just want to do courses. And then when I feel like I have the capacity to teach like, one-on-one classes or do presentations or stuff, then I have this stuff, but it like helped me develop all the things that I needed to do the courses. But I like set up all this stuff in my Eventbrite and I was like, yeah, this is terrible. I didn't want to do this, but streamline some things like you said. Anyway, yeah. So 2 more questions, I
Okay.
think is what I have on my list. So as an entrepreneur and business owner yourself, what advice would you give fellow business owners about running their own businesses, or maybe some lessons that you've learned along the way?
Gosh, there's so many lessons to learn. I just
Yeah.
really, I will go back again to hire support early on, but don't think that one person is going to be your savior, and try to challenge yourself in the mindset of, I can't afford that yet, because you can, and because you can hire somebody 1 hour a month to do a little bit of your bookkeeping. You can hire somebody 1 hour a month to do a little bit of your scheduling. You can hire somebody 1 hour a month to monitor your emails or do some social media, right? Like, you really don't have to be the one to do it all. And I don't subscribe to the culture of, we have to carry the burden completely on ourselves and work harder and exhaust ourselves. I just don't. So that's my number one thing to any small business is hire early. Just hire early and don't expect one person to save you. I really think that people who are creative are not also really well organized. And you don't hire somebody to organize your email and make all your papers go in pretty places electronically, and then create all your social media content.
Yeah.
That is a magical unicorn. You might find him or her, but good luck.
Yeah. Well, it's like one of those, like, I can do both. I can do the email and the organization, and I can do social media, but my God, do I hate doing social media stuff. So like, I would not be your friend. And most of it, again, is because I had to learn how to do a lot of this stuff. So I'm like, I know how to do things. Not an expert. Don't love it.
Yeah. I think it's important to think, like, what are the top 3 things that will move the needle in my business every week? Those are the things I should be doing.
Yeah.
Or having support to do some of those, right? And what do I really enjoy? For me, recently I realized I love to write. And I have a personal blog, oxygenfirst.com, and I have a business blog on Rock Consulting. And I write often, like twice or 3 times a month on the Rock Consulting one. And we then turn them into email campaigns and newsletters. But I had never really allowed myself to have a full day to write. Well, I kept craving this full day to write. And it finally dawned on me that, wait a second, I could write like 8 blogs, and then we can create all of our content from there. And then we can create all of our, all of the other things from there. But writing actually does drive me, and it lights me up, and it helps me solve problems. And the more I step into that, even though it doesn't sound like it's revenue generating, I believe more revenue comes into my world.
No, it's perfect. Yeah. Because it's such a useful way to create your content.
And I love it, right? Like it is what lights me up. You ask me what I want to be doing in 2 years, I want to be writing and speaking on stages. Right. And so podcasting is another thing that I love to do. I love to appear on podcasts because I enjoy it. So those are, that connection factor is really important in my top 3 every week. And what other things that have to be done can somebody just else do, so that I can focus on my big 3s?
Yeah. Doing the stuff you actually want to do. That's the journey. So tell us how we can support you. What are you working on? How do people find you? All that kind of good stuff.
People can find me on Instagram, ._rock_. I'm also on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. And I have my website, .rockconsulting.com. People can check me out. I have some free resources on there. People can go sign up for a downloadable course, a 30-minute course, learning how to hire their first virtual assistant. But within that, it has like hiring processes and how to write a job description and how to onboard people, so that people can just download those templates to implement in their business. And so also just reading my blog and following me there can be a great space to learn about what I do. I do VIP intensives with people where we work on these processes and continually scale businesses. And I also do, like I said, the boot camp. Those come up every quarter. You can sign up to be a part of my boot camps. And also I do small mini sessions called Connecting the Dots sessions for 1 hour for like $147. People can get a taste of what it would look like for me to scale their business.
Very cool. Well, yeah, thanks for reaching out to me. I appreciate it. I could talk about HR strategy, all that kind of stuff for days. Yeah, I greatly appreciate your
Yeah.
time, and I'm excited to get this episode out there.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening today. This was a great episode, and I'm sure you will appreciate the tips and insights from today. If you want to connect further with our guests, you can find the contact information, social media links, etc., any of the freebies in the show notes from today's episode. Please show some love to our guests and like, follow, and subscribe their content if you connected with them. And also don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe Building Better Businesses with Catalyst Consulting. Also, if you drop a juicy review, that's always cool too.